Writing the West. Stories and poems by Rick Stever. Read by Michael Messner and friends. War Horse. The Modoc War was one of the bloodiest conflicts in the history of the Northwest, costing the lives of 41 soldiers and all but decimating the Modoc tribe. During the final battle, fought in the lava beds of California, the Modoc retreated and the soldiers overran their position. According to Captain Harrison Kelly,
Indians abandoned their horses and my men using every rope available and even tearing shirts into strips and tying the ends together. Captured as many of the ponies as they could, even though I told them that they were foolish. No, the ponies wouldn't be worth the bother. Well, it had been my experience that Indian ponies were underfed and overworked. Consequently, they did not make good mounts. Well, after we returned to Jacksonville, one of the men brought me an Indian pony and offered to sell it to me for $35. The horse was spotted, had a roached mane, and was in remarkably good condition. I paid the $35, took to calling my little pony by the name Billy.
Billy was sure-footed, was easily trained to work cattle, and possessed outstanding endurance. On several occasions, Captain Kelly covered more than 60 miles in a single day while riding Billy. In 1905, Captain Kelly gave a Paiute permission to ride Billy in the Lewis and Clark Expedition Parade in Portland. Afterwards, the old war horse was turned out to pasture. He lived to be more than 40 years old. Youngest Cowboy. 8-year-old Gibby Masterson was up early, dressed and wearing his brand new red boots. This was the day his father had promised he could help with branding. Gibby tended the fire while the cowboys roped calves and dragged them, bawling and kicking, toward the branding area. He was Johnny on the spot every time the men called for the iron. About mid-morning, one of the cowboys rode in leading a horse.
Now, this is my spare,
the cowboy told Gibby.
I won't be needing him. You can have him for the day if you don't mind riding bareback.
The cowboy helped Gibby onto the horse, and he worked helping to cut out calves to be branded. Finally, somebody hollered,
"Dinner time!"
The cowboys turned their mounts toward the barn in a slow gallop. Gibby followed. But as his horse leaped a small ditch, Gibby lost his balance, and without a saddle horn to grab, he could not right himself. The boy fell, hit the ground, bounced, and lay in the scrubby sage, momentarily stunned. When he did manage to draw a breath, he started crying. One of the cowboys caught the horse and led him to where Gibby lay.
Well, that was a heck of a ride. I saw the way he was bucking. I don't know how you stayed with him as long as you did.
The cowboy's remarks soothed Gibby's damaged pride. He quit crying, wiped his tears away, and after a helping hand up, he rode on in for some of his mother's fine cooking. Shape of things to come. The native lived within the broad circle of round teepees, campfires, seasons. It was the white man who invented limits to the way we think in rectangles, money, windows, doors, rooms. Forced to free ourselves of rigid shapes, we push away the ladder of compliance to accept the long, sweet curve of eternity. Black Demon. Dick Stanley was a world champion bronc rider, and when his days as an active performer were nearing the end, he put together a Wild West show that featured cowboys, Native Americans, ropers, and trick riders. But the star attraction was a stallion known far and wide as Black Demon. At the finale, Black Demon, all fire and fury, would be led into the arena, and Stanley would call out,
"Now this here is the meanest outlaw, the worst fucking drunk in existence. Now he'll poke a hole in the wind and move faster than gossip at a church social. When he gets to popping leather, really gets with it, takes 15 minutes for his shadow to catch up with it."
When the crowd was ready, Stanley threw out the challenge.
"Any red-blooded drunk rider, I'm offering $50 on the barrelhead to any man who can ride Black Demon."
Usually, a confident cowboy stepped over the rail and sauntered into the arena, only to be humbled in front of family and friends by the devil horse. During a performance in California, Stanley could not interest even a single volunteer into attempting to ride Black Demon.
"Ain't there one of you is any guts?"
But still, no one stepped forward.
"All right, I'll have to go at him myself."
Stanley hoisted himself onto the saddle. The blindfold was removed and the snubbing horse cast away. Black Demon reared over backwards, and Stanley was pinned to the ground. Black Demon struggled to his feet and ran away, but Stanley remained on the ground, motionless. He was dead. Big Ed. Cigarette smoke hung like a thick ground fog in the crowded saloon. Cowboys stood belly to the bar, throwing back their heads and tossing down drinks. All of a sudden, the swinging doors were flung open, and a high-pitched voice barked over the din, "Big Ed's a-comin'! Big Ed's a-comin'!" Patrons scattered in every direction, leaving behind only the bartender. Within a few minutes, there was the sound of a great whirlwind outside. One section of the wall collapsed inward, and a huge, red-bearded man riding a 10-foot-tall polar bear and using a logging chain for reins and a live rattlesnake for a whip rode in and dismounted. He hollered,
"Give me a drink!"
and the building shook like a toothpick house in a gale. The bartender nervously set a bottle of whiskey on the bar, slid it towards the stranger, and returned to cower in the far corner. The stranger grabbed it in his fist, drank it all in one tremendous gulp, and then shooed the bottle and swallowed it.
Sir, would you care for another?
The big man shook his head, muttered, "Nah." He remounted the polar bear, and just before he swung the rattlesnake whip, he'd called to the bartender,
"I don't have time for another drink. Ain't you heard? Big Ed's a-comin'!"
You've been listening to Writing the West. The stories and poetry in this podcast are by Rick Stieber and appear in books by him. Log on to www.rickstieberauthor.com to find out more. This program was produced by Michael Messner by permission of the author. Special thanks to Michael Tucker and Art Shingler. Thank you for listening.